Hello friends, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365. In today's video, I'm going to go over 10 classic movies that you definitely need to check out on 4K. About 3 years ago, I did a video of top 10 classic movies that are on 4K. And since then, we have gotten so many more that I thought I would do an updated version of that particular video, but it's not necessarily a top 10. These are 10 movies, maybe even a couple honorable mentions that I feel are best representing what classic cinema looks like on the 4K format. I've said this many times on this channel that classic cinema really exemplifies what the 4K format just brings to the table, because a lot of times there are restorations, there's new work, and more often than not, the results are so much better than what we got previously on their initial Blu-ray releases. So now I'm going to give you 10 classic movie recommendations that you should definitely check out on 4K. There might be a little overlap between what I talk about in this video and in the previous one, which I will link in the comments section below. Once again, these are not in any particular order, so my number one is not necessarily my number one. But I also, as always, encourage you to put in the comments section below what are some classic movies that are out on 4K that you personally would recommend to the rest of us. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that classic movies on 4K have been making a mad rush to get to the format in the last few years. It's amazing what has come out on the format since that initial video. But for my first pick, this came out from Warner Brothers late last year, and it is awesome. Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. This, in my opinion, is such a well-done movie on 4K. It looks great. Not only do we get an impressive visual enhancement with HDR, I think it looks fantastic. Great movie, by the way. It's just awesome. And also, it does have, in fact, a Dolby Atmos mix. Now, of course, it's not going to measure up to what we would get in today's movies, but for the time period, I think there's some fun audio cues. And the Atmos, I feel, opens up the soundstage quite well. This, in my opinion, is a well-done all-around package. Visual upgrade check, audio upgrade check. I love it. I think it's great. You should definitely check this one out. So this makes the list for this year. This next one was featured in my previous video, but I definitely think that it belongs on just any of these kind of lists. Lawrence of Arabia from Sony. This is an outstanding 4K. Now, say what you will about Sony's movies that come out today, but when it comes to classic cinema, they do some arguably of the best work on the format that it has to offer. I love it. This was available as part of a Columbia Classics Collection, Volume 1, I believe, and was recently, well, not recently, but it was released individually in the last couple years, so everybody has a chance to own it. But, I mean, you get a great visual presentation, proper film grain, full HDR Dolby Vision support, palette looks amazing, and the Dolby Atmos. The score in this film is legendary. It is epic, and I love how it sounds on 4K. Great Atmos upgrade, visual, awesome. So Lawrence of Arabia, epic film, gets a really epic 4K. There seems to be some, I would say, misconception out in the community that black and white films don't benefit from 4K releases. That is further from the truth. I think they look amazing. And there are plenty of instances that I could have put on this list that qualify that statement. But for this particular video, I'm going to go with Casablanca. I mean, come on, the film itself is legendary in status. It is such a good film. I mean, it's a beautiful movie. And yes, it's black and white, but you get that nice refinement of grayscale, blacks, whites. They look awesome with HDR. No complaints whatsoever. I think this is a beautiful looking presentation. No Atmos upgrade on this one. I don't think it really would have benefited too much from it, but maybe one day. But I don't know. I think when it comes to a visual, upgrade, you're definitely getting it. I would stack this against any Blu-ray any day of the week. I think it looks beautiful. So classic cinema on 4K, even the black and white variety, definitely check this one out. I love classic movies that fully embrace the use of color. I mean, just from a set pieces or costuming or just design, and Singin' in the Rain on 4K is an absolutely stunning 4K disc. I love this movie. It is such a great film. And, you know, the Blu-ray was good in its own right, but getting the 4K upgrade with the full HDR to it, awesome. This, in my opinion, is one of the best looking discs on this list. It's beautiful. I mean, if you like a good visual feast for the eyes in classic cinema form, Singin' in the Rain, I wholeheartedly recommend this one to anybody, even just as a film. Even if you're not interested in 4K as a format, watch the movie. But if you are a 4K format person, I can't recommend this one enough. Singin' in the Rain on 4K, high recommendation. Going back to black and white for a minute, I am a huge fan of Japanese cinema, and Akira Kurosawa films are among my favorite. And the recent release of Seven Samurai from the Criterion Collection, this is another well done 4K of a classic film, and it looks beautiful on the format. Now, of course, if you want different options, you have the Criterion release, but you also have the BFI version. That version has a full HDR Dolby Vision support. I actually did a full comparison review video if you want to check it out. But either option, in my opinion, is great. I love this film. I go back to this one at least once a year. Many of his films I go back to at least once a year, but they are slowly but surely making their way to the 4K formats. We also have the recent release of Sanjiro and Yojimbo on 4K, also from Criterion and BFI flavors, respectively. But I mean, Seven Samurai it's a beautifully made movie. It's awesome. Oh, I love it. But if you choose to go for the 4K, you are definitely getting something special. So check this one out. I do not think you'll be disappointed. When it comes to large scale epics, when it comes to cinema, we get fewer and fewer of them in today's movie making. There's some out there that are still, being made, but way back when in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, those were almost like regular. But for this particular pick, the 10 Commandments on 4K from Paramount, this, in my opinion, is awesome. This is an awesome 4K release. I know Paramount as a studio sometimes gets a little bit of flack when it comes to releasing catalog stuff. Lord knows I've often talked about this on the channel with previous reviews. And there's another one on this list that is also one of their best efforts. But the 10 Commandments, it's an epic movie. It looks fantastic on 4K, and it easily just buries what we got on the Blu-ray. I love going back to this one and having a movie like this on 4K, best possible at-home experience next to seeing it initially in the theater. It's awesome. It really is. It's an entertaining film. It's epic, and it definitely got the best of quality from Paramount here. So check this one out on 4K. I think you'll enjoy it. This is a universal release and one of Steven Spielberg's most recognizable films, and definitely cemented itself in pop culture and history of cinema. I'm talking about Jaws. The 4K of this is really awesome. It's great. Nice layer of film grain. It does not look like it has been negatively tampered with. HDR on this is awesome. Looks fantastic. No complaints whatsoever. And this is also another classic film that has gotten the Dolby Atmos treatment. John Williams' score in this, oh man, I would say next to, I would say next to Lawrence of Arabia is probably some of the most recognizable when it comes to the score. It really is awesome, and I think this is just an excellent looking and sounding 4K disc. I would recommend this one to anybody any day of the week. It's an easy upgrade over the Blu-ray. I also, as a personal standpoint, it is one of my favorite movies. It's definitely in that top 10 for me. So Jaws on 4K, check this one out. It is amazing. I remember when I first reviewed this one, I was caught off guard of just how great of an improvement it looked on the 4K formats. The Synapse release of Dario Argento's Suspiria, in my opinion, it's his most improved 4K release of all of his films, and it is simply a stunning transfer. This movie has such a unique visual style, and it lends itself very well to what we get with HDR and Dolby Vision. I am very impressed with how this turned out. And I still, when I go back to it, it blows me away. And this was also another film that was given a Dolby Atmos upgrade. And I think it does a fair job with those additional speakers. Really opens up the soundstage well. You also, I believe, have the original options on as far as audio. So if you're more of a purist, you can go back to that. But the Atmos on this one is pretty impressive. I recommend this 4K to anybody who's looking for a good horror thriller film. Dario Argento has a lot of his movies that are now on 4K. I own many of them in my collection. But for me, Suspiria, I would say it's definitely ahead on the list. My next pick was a late 2024 release. In fact, it was so late, it was even delayed from my initial release date. So unfortunately, it did not make my top 10 catalog 4K release of that year, but if I had it in my hands, it certainly would have made the list. But Warner Brothers release of The Searchers from director John Ford, wow. I mean, in my opinion, this is one of the best catalog releases that was ever released on the formats. I am impressed beyond words of how this turned out. I know when it comes to certain movies, there's always some people that are saying, oh, how much of an upgrade over the Blu-ray is there? This, in my opinion, is no question. The upgrade is simply stunning. Oh man, I mean, the movie was shot, with such beautiful like scope, and everything on screen just looks great. But add in that extra 4K with HDR, awesome stuff. Really. I mean, I am very impressed with how this turned out on 4K. As I said, it is, in my opinion, one of the best out there. So yeah, I easily and wholeheartedly recommend The Searchers on 4K. And before I get to my final pick, just a few quick honorable mentions, and all three of these can be talked about a lot more in that initial video I spoke about earlier, which, once again, I will link in the comment section. For me, 2001: A Space Odyssey from director Stanley Kubrick on 4K. It's a masterclass of how a 4K looks. I mean, this is such a beautifully done movie in its own right, but bringing it to 4K, great stuff. I've talked about this one quite a bit, so I mean, yeah, check this one out. And also Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. When I talk about visual unique films, this is definitely one of his more visually unique ones. And with HDR, stunning looking picture. I am very impressed with how this turned out, and I recommend this one to anybody. And of course, you have to mention The Wizard of Oz, the original classic. I am also very impressed with how this turned out on 4K. I mean, wow. I mean, this is a beautiful looking picture. I could talk about this more in depth in that initial video. So yeah, Wizard of Oz, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Vertigo, those definitely get honorable mentions. In my opinion, Paramount as a studio has some of the most iconic classic cinema under their banner. Unfortunately, sometimes when they put out their 4K releases, they don't always have the best results. That also could be a whole separate video. But for this list, Paramount's release of My Fair Lady is easily one of the best that the format has to offer. I am floored with how this looks on the 4K formats. I love good classic movies that also take place back in a certain time and an era. And with the costuming, set designs, and the visual style with the film, HDR, Dolby Vision brings out the colors and the palette with beautiful results. I am just so impressed with how this turned out on the format. Nice layer of grain. I have no complaints. It's easily one of the best looking 4K catalog titles out there. Yeah, I do recommend it. There's no Atmos or anything included with this, just the 5.1 on it. But from a sound design perspective, I think it sounds great. No complaints whatsoever. But I love how My Fair Lady looks on 4K. I revisit this one at least once a year, and it is something I would recommend as if you want to get good classic cinema on 4K and try something new. I definitely recommend this one to you. I do not think you'll be disappointed. So yes, My Fair Lady is on the list. Honestly, I could have done this video with 25 or 30 classic movies, but I mean, I feel my choices here and picks are only just getting things started. That is where I will leave it to you. What classic films on 4K do you think are some of the best out there? Sound off down below. Let us all know what you think. And hey, if you're interested in the ones I talked about in this video, I will leave direct Amazon links in the comment section. So in the meantime, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. So until next time, this is Adam with Movie Guide 365. I will see you at the movies.